Hi everyone, I'm Kelvin Koay, and today I'll be sharing on introduction of Personal Data Protection Act 2010. Can you guys hear me? Just to check the audio before I proceed further. You guys can use the chat box as well. Okay, maybe thumbs up. So I apologize first because my screen seems a bit, there's a bit of flash going on my screen, but you guys can still see me. So let's get straight to it. So today our focus is on personal data protection. So it is governed under the laws of data privacy. There are three other areas: physical privacy, communication and surveillance, and territorial, which we will not discuss today because I did not study about those three lah. Yeah. So let's get straight to data privacy. So what is personal data? Personal data is basically any information in commercial transactions. So if you see any of your information appears in any business transaction, any commercial transaction that can identify or identifiable of the data subject, which is you, then it will tantamount as personal data. So examples are your IC, your my card, your phone number. Actually, your whole phone is like a treasure of all sorts of personal data. So you imagine if you unlock your phone right now, you wouldn't dare to pass it to the person next to you because of how much of data your phone consists. And there's another type of personal data, which is called sensitive personal data, which consists of your beliefs, your physical or mental health, even your political opinions. So the obligations imposed by the PDPA in respect of sensitive personal data are even more stringent. So let's talk about the regulator. The main regulator for data protection is the Department of Personal Data Protection, or the Jabatan Perlindungan Data Peribadi, in short, PDP. The PDP is an agency under the Ministry of Communications and Multimedia, and the current commissioner is Mas Malik bin Mohamad. So the main responsibility of this agency is to enforce and regulate the PDPA in Malaysia, with the focus on the personal data in commercial transactions. So why do we need to govern the personal data, our personal data? It is especially important because we can see a connection between a great quality of data governance as a strategy enabler to advance an organization. And one organization which does not care about data privacy or data governance, it will not thrive in the digital economy. There's a concept that data is the new oil. This is because we relate data as an important resources that is available in today's era, which can be extracted basically anywhere. But traditional oil is scarce and very limited. And on the other hand, data is infinite and basically it is available everywhere. So let's talk about data breach. We will now look into the implications of poor data governance. So in last year, actually appeared in the newspaper for breach of its digital database. Basically, this data breach involved 24,000 personal data, including login IDs and password on their staff and their students being leaked online. So I'm not sure if you guys have saw this news, but it was quite a serious data breach last year. Yep. So moving on, I'd like to show you guys a video of how severe data breach can be. So for those of you that needs to plug in the earphone now, you may do so. I'll just play it. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for calling Hot and Fast Pizzas. Can I
I
have...
want to order a pizza.
Surely, sir. Can I have your multipurpose identification number?
One sec. Yeah, 8 RSP 06031983MI.
Thank you for the number, sir. Am I speaking with Mr. Rajneesh Haspuri from Baikala, Mumbai?
Yes.
The number from which you're calling is 9191930484 and your residential number is 22223244.
Yes. But how do you know all this?
We are connected to the system, sir. We have all the related information.
Thank you, sir. Good, good. I want to order a regular size seafood pizza.
Sure, sir.
Good evening, sir.
But that's not a good idea.
What do you mean?
As per your last medical records at Bombay Hospital, dated 9th August 2015, you have high blood pressure and a high cholesterol level, sir.
What are you saying?
As I said, we are connected to the system, sir.
Only 25 minutes. Oh shit. Okay. Then what would you recommend?
Try a low-fat super veggie delight Mexican pizza. You will like it.
And how can you say that?
As you borrowed a book titled Popular Mexican Food from National Library last month, which is overdue to be returned, sir.
Okay, I give up. See, I'm very hungry. Send me one of those. How much would it cost?
The total cost is rupees 365 including taxes, sir.
Okay, fine. You send the pizza. I'll pay for it by my credit card, okay?
I'm afraid you have to pay us by cash, sir. Your only active credit card of Apex Bank is over the limit and amount due is rupees 79,765 since July 2015. That's not including the late payment charges on your last cash withdrawal.
That's fine. You send the pizza. Good evening, sir. I guess I will have to go to the ATM in the next lane.
Sorry to inform, but you can't, sir. You have reached your daily cash limits, which was withdrawn at an ATM at Domestic Airport Terminal B when your wife took a flight to New Delhi today.
Damn it. How do you know?
As I said, we are connected.
Yes, you're connected to the system.
Just 25 minutes.
You send the pizza.
Thank you, sir.
I'll pay by cash. How long would it take?
25 minutes, sir. But if you can't wait, as you said earlier, that you're very hungry, you can always come to our nearest outlet.
What?
As you're just 4 minutes away from our nearest outlet in your area, and you have a car of number MS01XE3484, your Kazi brand.
Oh God. How the hell you
As
know?
I said to you earlier, we are connected to the system, sir.
What the? I just want my pizza.
Okay, your order is confirmed, sir. Anything else, sir?
Nothing. Would I be getting that free bottle of cola mentioned in your menu?
We normally would, sir. But based on your medical records, you're also a diabetic and...
Enough! Send the cola along, you bitch!
I request you, please do not use such language, sir. You were convicted on 13th March 2015 for using abusive language to a policeman.
What?
And you were also arrested for misbehaving with a lady in a party.
Shut up! Just shut up, you bitch!
Hope you guys can hear the audio earlier. So basically, it's just from the experience of ordering a pizza. This comedy film shows that how much that system actually knows about that man. And this was actually a comedy film 9 years back in India. So imagine 9 years back, they already picture how well the system could be connected. So imagine now, like 9 years later, today, like how possible and how real, how true it is. And it is probably happening to us. So moving on. About when a data breach happens, the PDPA actually does not provide does not require the data user to report or to inform the regulator about the data breach. However, this is something that the commission, the PDP is working on to basically they want to enforce data breach notification regime, because this is especially important to basically when there's a data breach happens, we should at least inform the regulator as well as the parties who might be affected. So in the PDPA, there are generally three parties involved. The first party is data user, who controls or who uses the personal data, or this person might also authorize someone else to process the personal data as well. The second party, it's a data processor, who is any person who basically processes the personal data on behalf of the data user. And the third is the probably you and I, the person who owns the personal data. We are called the data subject. So what is commercial transactions? Basically, commercial transactions are business activities or transactions in the commercial nature, which include the following activities: services, investment, trading, banking, and insurance. So we realized our firm in the legal industry, it's under the category of services. So if you are under such class users, we have to register with the Department of Personal Data Protection. So these are the relevant industries alongside the relevant statutes. So there are communications, banking and financial institution, insurance. All these are basically classes of class users, data users. Moving on, we have health, tourism and hospitalities, transportations, education. So I want to highlight to you that services, yeah, in fact, I have highlighted in yellow. So as a legal firm, we actually have to register with the Department of Personal Data Protection. And in fact, our firm had done so. So other than services includes, besides legal industry, the accounting, the engineering, and the architecture firm as well. They are construed as class users. Then there are also direct selling and real estate. The next categories are utility, pawnbroker, and money lender. So these 13 are the classes of data users that ought to register. So it is quite surprising to learn that Malaysia is the 5th worst country when it comes to personal data protection. This is done by a survey by a British website called the Comparitech. So this British website compares 47 countries, and out of the 47 countries, Malaysia actually lies at the bottom 5th. So we are actually under the category of some safeguards, but weakened protections. So it means that we do have some enforcement of some regulations and statutes in place in terms of data protection, but it is not sufficient. So you may be curious who comes last. Anyone wants to guess? Okay, seems like no one. It's actually China. China is the worst when it comes to personal data protection, probably due to the severe surveillance that they carry out. So the data user comes with a lot of responsibilities. In particular, a data user is required to comply with these 7 personal protection principles. So I'll go through these 7 principles in brief. So the first principle is the general principle, which basically prohibits you from processing any personal data without the consent of the data subject. So this is quite straightforward and self-explanatory. The second principle is the notice and choice principle, which basically impose the burden on the data user to explain to the data subject on the purpose on the purpose for which the personal data is being processed, what are the usage of the personal data, and the data user will also have to disclose, will also have to explain to the data subject if there's bound to any disclosure to any third party. So the third principle is called the disclosure principle. Basically, it prohibits the disclosure of personal data without the data subject's consent. So it's very similar to the first general principle. Moving on, the fourth security principle, it says that the data user needs to take the necessary steps to protect the personal data during the processing from loss, misuse, or modification. So basically, if our firm is keeping personal data, such as the files that we keep, we have to store it with sufficient security. So the fifth is retention principle, which says that the personal data is not to be retained longer than is necessary. So this is again very self-explanatory. We should not process or keep the personal data longer than it is necessary. And if we do, we must be able to justify why are we doing so. And when it comes to the time to dispose of the personal data, we have to ensure the personal data is destroyed or removed or deleted in the most secure and most proper way possible. So the sixth is data integrity. Basically, the data user must ensure that the personal data is accurate, complete, not misleading, and kept up to date. This is in line with the seventh principle, access principle, which says that when there are any personal data which is inaccurate, misleading, or outdated, we must allow the data user, the data user must allow the right to access by the data subject to make such correction. So far, so good. So that was the list of 7 general principles that the data user must comply with. Moving on, there are some exemptions, but partial, when it comes to the use or processing of personal data. So if any of these activities or circumstances arise, then they are not caught under the PDPA. So the first is if you want to basically make arrest of someone, so for prevention or detection of crime. Second is for research or statistics purposes. Third is for duty assessment and collection. Fourth is when any regulatory bodies are basically asking or requesting for that personal info, they may do so. Fourth would be court order or judgment. Fifth would be physical or mental health. And lastly would be for journal or literary. So moving on, there are some parties which are immune or they will not face any implication of the PDPA 2010. They are the government, of course. They do have to enjoy a certain immunity and flexibility in terms of processing personal data. So the PDPA is not applicable to them. So the second type of parties is personal or family household affairs. Third is if the data is processed out of Malaysia. Fourth is if it is a non-commercial transactions. And lastly, the credit reporting agencies are also not bound by the PDPA 2010. And this is the boring part. There are also a few, six in fact, subsidiary legislation that comes together with the PDPA. There are the Personal Data Protection Regulations 2013. Second, the Personal Data Protection Class and Data Users Order 2013. Third, the Personal Data Protection Registration of Data User Regulation 2013. Fourth, the Personal Data Protection Fees Regulations 2013. So all these four are in the year of 2013, and the following two are made in 2016. They are the Personal Data Protection Compounding of Offences Regulations 2016. And the sixth is Personal Data Protection Class of Data Users Amendment Order 2016. So you can try to remember this, but I just like to highlight to you the standard, which is the Personal Data Protection Standard 2015. So this standard is particularly important because it sets out the minimum requirement issued by the commissioner for common and repeated use, rules, guidelines, or characteristics for activities or their result. So basically, this standard applies to any person who processes or have control over or authorizes someone to process any personal data in respect of commercial transactions. And this standard also sets out three important principles. They are the security principle, retention principle, and the data integrity principle. So I'll zoom into these three principles for us to understand better about this standard. So in respect of the security standard principle, what the standard suggests for the data user to use to practice or implement are as follows. First, they should update the backup or recovery system and antivirus to prevent personal data intrusion. So this part, our firm has been doing well. We do have our antivirus system in our PC and laptops. So to further elaborate on the security standard, the data user also should have control and limit employees' access to personal data system. So this, again, our firm has complied well with this. As for example, for SharePoint, not all employees are allowed to access to a group that you are not working on. Third is to record personal data transferred conventionally, such as through mail, delivery, fax, and etc. So this highlights the importance of having to record down whatever personal data transferred. Fourth is to store all files containing personal data in a locked place. So do you all know where the personal data are placed in our firm? Does anyone knows? Okay, no one's replying. Okay, I don't know as well. So moving on, the second standard, retention standard, basically is what a data user should do is to keep personal data no longer than necessary unless there are requirements by other legal provisions. So I will not elaborate further because this is quite repetitive from the previous 7 general principles. So the third standard is on data integrity. So basically the data user should notify on personal data updates by appropriate methods. We should also provide personal data updates form for data subjects. Third is to update the personal data immediately. So this is also in line with the right to access that was explained earlier. So let's talk about the don'ts and don'ts. Okay, realize it's not do's and don'ts because PDPA is a very strict legislation. But here I'm not going to talk about so much on PDPA. It's probably more on the how you should protect your personal data, and yeah, it's something that we can practice along. So the first thing is the post-it note password management. I'm not sure if anyone does it, but it is especially effective and helpful to help someone to recall what your passwords are. So anyone does it? Okay. Anyone use post-it note to write your passwords? Okay lah, I assume at least one will do lah, okay? So this is not right because if you do so, other people, even your colleague, might actually pick up your password and he might incidentally, cause data breach somehow, somewhere in the future. So moving on, it's if you do use any of these softwares or the apps, please remember not to use one password for all, because what happened is if a hacker wants to hack your phone or your PC, they just have to hack one because they could access all of your applications by one password, right? So do, if possible, use different passwords for your different accounts, especially your personal email and your work email. So speaking of compliance, our firm does register with the Department of Personal Data Protection. This is our cert, and it has the validity of 24 months. So we registered, and it is in effect from the 3rd of 21st March 2019. So to zoom in for you, basically our firm registered because we are under the category of 1801 under the category of services perkhidmatan. So moving on compliance, these are something that we can look out for in compliance of the PDPA 2010. First is the top-down approach. Basically, we have to first understand what are the potential issues of any potential of data breach that is happening in the top management from top to down basically. So we have to analyze how to basically resolve by filling out the gaps. So some examples are I can break it down into three: to prevent, to detect, and to respond. So to prevent, the top management could have regular risk assessment and to set out good PDPA policies, as well as to train the personnel in our firm. Secondly is to detect, is basically our firm should have a good monitoring and compliance system. So in any case there's any data breach that we spot out or we realize, we can immediately report. So we must have a good reporting system as well. Thirdly is how the top management respond to it. So investigation and dealings with authorities, all this the top management has to be committed to it. Now let's talk about what are the rights of data subjects. So just now we were talking about the responsibilities of the data user, but the PDPA do confer some rights on the data subject. So if you are the data subject, basically you have willingly provides the personal data to an organization for processing purpose. First, you have the right to prevent processing for any direct marketing purposes. So this one, I think the most straightforward example is sometimes if you do subscribe to any brands on email, you could actually unsubscribe it. So this is your right. And second is you can also prevent processing any likely to cause damage or distress. So if you feel that you might feel distress or you may feel that there is a potential damage to you, you may also stop to basically allow the processing to happen. Third is very important: use your personal data forever. This is not the case here. You have the right to withdraw the consent. So upon withdrawing, the data user should stop, and they must stop processing your personal data. The fourth is basically the right to require data user to make correction of personal data. This is the right to access. Fifth is right to access of your personal data. So what are the sanctions if you fail to comply with the provisions of PDPA? Okay, for any breaching of the 7 data protection principles, it may attract a fine up to 300,000 ringgit and or to 2 years imprisonment. Secondly, for any unlawful collection, disclosure, and sale of personal data, it may attract a fine up to 500,000 and or up to 3 years imprisonment. So third thing I want to highlight is if any corporate body is found to have committed such offense, the officers, for example, the partners or the directors of these corporate organizations are deemed to have committed these offenses personally. So the burden is quite high. However, if such officers or directors or partners is able to prove that the offenses was committed without their knowledge, and at the same time they have taken reasonable precautions and exercised sufficient due diligence, then they are safe. So before I end, I just like to share some misconception. The first misconception is data is something that Jimmy should take care of, right? So if it's personal data or data, generally we are not involved. But that's not the case. Data management should be a collective responsibility, as it will bring out a lot of benefits for the firm itself. So we do have to take care of the personal data of ourselves and our firm collectively. Second misconception, this is something I've learned recently. If a premise is trying to take down your temperature, if basically a premise trying to scan your temperature, they are actually not allowed to record down, simply because the temperature is a health record, and a health record is a sensitive personal data. So next time you actually can refrain that maybe the shopkeeper to take down your temperature. But then you may have a question, why are we recording our temperature in HHQ? So actually this conception has a very big exception, and the exception is HR policy. So if you're an employee, you are subject to the HR policy, and the HR policy may actually restrict you to, they may actually take down the temperature that is allowed. So paying is fine. Okay, the third conception, this is the last misconception, is biometric, something that you need to show when you enter to this firm every single day. This is actually not protected in Malaysia yet, as compared to the European and the US. Those countries, they actually have already construed it as a sensitive data. So in Malaysia, it is still a bit backwards in terms of the types of personal data. And that's why we are ranked 5th, right, from the bottom. Okay, with that, I thank everyone for your time. Oh, not yet, I still have some slides. Okay, so the compliance of PDPA, why is it important is, I have listed out 4 points. First is, it will boost the public confidence and trust on our establishment. So I have showed the certificate earlier. We could actually put up the certificate in our firm so that when the clients come in, they could see the certificate and they'll be impressed that actually our firm comply with PDPA. Secondly, it do compliance of PDPA does avoid or minimize the incidence of data breach. Third is, it increases efficiency and governance of personal data. Fourth is to ensure prudence and integrity in handling personal data. All right, it comes to an end. Thank you so much for your time, and let's get back to work.